Solution Talk. Water Growth Nexus. Sustaining Industrial Development in a Thirsty World. Please welcome your host, Katie Gallus.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming by and for coming along for our solution talk. I'm looking into a lot of familiar faces. It's lovely to have so many familiar faces joining here for our solution talk when it comes to water, the water growth nexus, and how to sustain industrial development in a thirsty world. And without further ado, I hand over to one of the Hamburg Sustainability Conference youth ambassadors with us today from the Youth Parliament of Kazakhstan. Please also shower him with a welcoming applause, Kuanysh Uzbekov.
Good morning. It's a very nice morning to start our conversation about the water. I see most of you have a cup of water in front of you, which highlights the importance of that valuable resource. But today's topic, we would like to frame water not just as a resource, but as a capital. Because we see it as a current transforming economies, water becoming more and more important. But at the same time, it's not at the same floor of the high-level discussions. But today, I would like to first ask from you, our guests. Let's vote. I will name some restrictions, and you should think what is the most important restriction for the industrial development in our communities. You can just hands up if you agree with that statement. The first is funding. Who thinks that funding is the most biggest constraint for the development? Thank you. Two. Who believes that it is actually skilled labor shortage? Good. Who believes that it is the water? Because we are here, I think we're a little bit biased, but okay. Yeah. So, in the next task, it would be very nice to look for your neighbors, because water know no boundaries. Let's be like water. So you can discuss for the 2 minutes with your neighbor, why do you think that water or other constraint is the biggest challenge for the development? Then we will get up some opinions from the floor. So you have 2 minutes. I will set up the timer. Time starts now.
You're good in German timekeeping, right? Wonderful.
He's going to keep us honest.
2 minutes to go. Thank you.
Are our microphones on?
They are on.
Yeah.
Ja, muss sagen, ist ja auch meistens, also es ist ja auch immer schwierig. Ja, es hat Also die Frage ist, was gestern von den Erziehungsreformen meinte, also was wir halt haben, wir haben ja viele so Landscape-Action-Ansätze. Also zum Beispiel in Kolumbien haben wir das. Und der gerade hier hat das in Kolumbien auch am Bogotá. Seitdem habe ich, da sagte mir gerade so eine Info, mit der ich gesprochen hatte. Ich glaube, das war dass man einfach guckt, dass man das, glaube ich, könnte ich so ein bisschen aushebeln, dass man überlegen kann, gibt es gemeinsame Gebiete, wo beide drauf sourcen und wahlweise auch gar nicht dasselbe, sondern wir sourcen X und wir sourcen Y. Ja, genau. Finde ich auch. Und gemeinsam den Landschaftsansatz machen, weil dann finde ich jetzt auch so gar keine Wettbewerb, also gar keine Preiskomponente dessen, weil man würde ja nicht sagen, weil der investiert sind auch. Ja, und zu unterschiedlichen Produkten auch, aber man könnte es trotzdem mit der gemeinsamen Kommunikation nutzen, finde ich total absolut. Weil ich finde, das ist der Weg, den man gehen muss, um zu sein. Genau.
Time is up. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now please, I would like to get your attention. Could I catch it? Your attention? Yes.
Oh, I need to remember that. That's a good trick for the model. Yeah, nice, Kuanysh. All right.
I give it to you. So please.
What a gentleman. Nice play.
So,
Thank you.
Who would like to share the main insight from your partner or from yourself that you got for this discussion? Anyone? Don't be shy.
Not all at once. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference. Here we go.
Please, yes. If you could just shortly your name and the insight.
Mike.
Okay. My name is Mohammad Anwar Hussain. I am from Bangladesh. I am the managing director of one of textile company. I am producing the textile and the garments. So in our country, most of our country is like South Asian, like Bangladesh, China, Vietnam, others countries. They have a scarcity of the drinking water because of the textile industries. A lot of textile industries, they have polluted the water and they need a huge quantity of water every day. So per kilo of fabric dyeing, it needs near about 100 liter of the drinking pure water. So it's a huge quantity. So I've just shared with my partner about discussion partner, you can say. Okay. So yes, it's important to saving the water in the world. So it's now time to save the water for the drinking water for the people, general people, and the quality of the water. She shared with me that's the quality of water for dyeing. It needs to remove the iron and hardness of the water. And for the drinking water, it needs to be free from arsenic. So it's very important to discuss today's session as well.
I can agree with you more, Anwar. You're right that water is actually human rights also. So from that perspective, who would like to add more? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I am Majku Loretta OBMDK from Nigeria. Okay, as I was discussing with my partner, okay, I talked about that people actually do not think that water is a limited resource, because I was asking, is it limited resources? And it is, because drinking water is a limited resource. Like I was telling him that when I learned about the Ethiopia water crisis, where families, young people, school-going children that should be in school are trekking miles just to be able to fetch drinking water. And at the end of the day, it is not really a pure water for them to drink, but they do not have any other option. Then in my country, Nigeria, in the Niger Delta, people where the oil has affected the water bodies, and people still fetch from there and also drink, eat, and do all their household things from that water. And you see that water is there, but potable drinking water is a scarce resource. So how are we going to make sure that everybody living in this planet Earth drink water that is potable?
That's an amazing comment. We never should judge people for their decisions because we never know what options they had. And the last comment we can get, and I will move on, giving the floor to Katie. Please.
Thank you. My name is Peter Hartwig, company Remondis Aqua. There's a possibility, the technology is there to really have closed cycles, zero liquid discharge in industries. But what we saw worldwide is very important that these systems are operated in the best way. If they are industrial parks and the recycled water is not that good quality, then it's a very big problem for all companies who are in this park and getting then the water which is not, maybe it's not good enough. So the technical solutions are there, but it needs the technological investment and a good operation. But that can support very much really to reduce the water demand by closed systems.
So innovations could be the solution. Thank you so much for your valuable feedbacks. And please, Katie, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kuanysh. A round of applause to our youth ambassador. Thank you for all your keywords: operation, investment, technology, bringing in and actually scaling up a limited resource, but also bringing it into economic and industrial policy discussions, because it needs to be implemented into the political systemic fabric as well when we talk about water availability. And with that, I welcome you to our solutions talk. As you all know, we are living in times of rising water stress, extreme weather events. I mean, we are in the midst of it. When it comes to urbanization, growing demands, you all know the ecosystem, the factors that are actually tackling our topic of today. And water security is therefore evolving from just an environmental concern also into a strategic economic issue. And with that framing, I welcome you once again. So for the next 30 or minutes or so, of course, we keep that momentum going with your questions, with your inputs, with your thoughts. So please also be actively engaged. And we here in the panel, we like to discuss a little bit more into the question, how can water move from the margins of sustainability discussions really to the center, what I outlined, to the center of economic decision making, to bring it into the systemic fabric, and how can we examine water as a form of capital that underpins, of course, long-term economic resilience, prosperity, and sustainable development, but also what will it take to sustain industrial growth and competitiveness in an increasingly thirsty world. Georg Weber is with us from the WILO Group, CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and WILO is known as an internationally operating mechanical engineering company for pumps, primarily for building services and water management. Georg, it's great to have you with us. This is your round of applause. Thank you very much. I continue our circuit and I say hello, welcome to Vidiya Amrit Khan from the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association. She's the Vice President. She's a pioneer in Bangladesh ready-made garment sector. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much. And last but not least, I welcome Valerie Hickey from the World Bank Group, the Director Environment at the World Bank Group. In this role, she leads a global team that leverages data, knowledge, partnerships, and to ensure, of course, that the World Bank Group's public and private sector investments in nature, natural resource management, pollution management, and the circular economy generate more and better jobs. Thank you so much, Valerie, for being here. This is your round of applause. Valerie, and I'd like to kick off the conversation with you with a rather general question, but a very precise and concrete question, which is highly important to understand a little bit the systemic framework. So water and water availability, why is it still missing from many economic and industrial policy debates? Because it's so crucial, but yet it's lacking. Why?
It's hidden infrastructure. It's strategic infrastructure, capital. But for most governments, they invest in it through subsidies. They invest in it off budget through water utilities. So they're not actually monitoring it. They're not watching it. Most people don't understand that 25% of water is traded internationally through goods. So water shortage in one place turns up as a supply disruption somewhere else. And so the connections aren't always visible. The investments aren't always visible. And we don't simply understand the scale of the problem. Yes, we've grown by 1/3 as a population since 2000, and water demand has only gone up 25%. So we're getting more efficient in how we use water. But at the same time, every minute, we're losing the equivalent of 250 swimming pools full of fresh water. Demand's up 25%. We're losing 250 swimming pools of water. That isn't obvious, but it is macro critical, and we have to start putting it at the center of all of our discussions around jobs, around development, around industrialization, because you can't easily replace water with something else.
Of course, I'd like to hear your perspective as well when it comes to the question of why does water matter for growth? What is your perspective, of course, from a developing country, from Bangladesh perspective? Why would you say does water matter for economic growth in your perspective in the ecosystem of Bangladesh?
So Bangladesh, as you know, is the second largest producer of garments in the world, right after China. And we export approximately $40 billion worth of garments to Europe and the US. And Germany is also, I think, one of the highest countries to which we export from Bangladesh within Europe. Now, we require almost 15 billion liters of water annually to produce 5 million tons of fabric every year. And Bangladesh is not even a fabric producing country as such. We usually import it from China and other countries near us. Now, our target is to reach 100 billion in the next 5 to 10 years. 10 years. We've been saying that for a while, but about 10 years. So imagine the amount of water we will require. Now, in Bangladesh, I think it's a very positive thing that we work with the World Bank. In relation to funding, we work with the IFC. There's a PACT program, which is the Partnership for Cleaner Textiles. And within that program, almost 450 factories have worked together to reduce the amount of water. Now, it's mandatory for every factory to have effluent water treatment plant, which is not very expensive at the end of the day. But when you talk about zero discharge, then it's a very big investment. And we have about 4,000 factories in Bangladesh, out of which I think 500 are the larger ones, and the rest, 1,700 or so, are the SMEs. Now, when it's a question of the larger factories, it's okay. Everybody wants to finance the larger factories, whether it's World Bank, whether it's the IFC, the ADB, any big organization. But when it comes to working with the SMEs, that's where we have a problem. Because very recently, earlier this year, for example, the World Bank approached us in Bangladesh, and they said they had $1 million worth of funds that they wanted to give out to partner factories, member factories of the BGMEA. Now, when we asked them which factories, they said, well, factories which already have a water treatment plant or a zero discharge unit. So we said, what about the ones that are smaller, the SMEs? Could we have cluster approaches? No, because in order to get the funding, and this is where, when he said, is funding important? Yes, of course, funding is very important. Water is important, but funding is important also. But it's usually the case that in order to solve problems, the bigger factories are getting the funding easily, or the projects, they're being able to onboard the projects easily. Now, when it comes to the larger number of factories, which are the SMEs, not much help there. So that's a question of where water will come, that how much are we willing to help everybody across the board versus those who can get help anywhere and everywhere anyways.
Maybe you should exchange business cards, because I see that there is a connection, and Georg from WILO, maybe that is an interesting point of a new business idea over development.
No, and even with the World Bank, of course.
Of course.
Funding is more coming from her, I guess.
It's good that we all in this together. But Georg, of course, how is then now water becoming really a strategic factor from your side, from a business perspective, for competitiveness and for investment in a way as well?
Yeah, but before, allow me a few words, a few numbers before I give you an answer. I think the available drinking water in the world is only 2.5%. The rest is salty water, and desalination is not easy and very energy consuming, expensive, etc. When we take the 2.5% remaining, we have probably only a third or a quarter of that one, which is pure available drinking water, but because the rest is in permafrost and glaciers and whatever. And when we see then that we are growing from now 8 billion people to 10 billion in the next years, we see a growing demand. We see at the same time lots of issues because we have leakages. And sometimes in developed countries like UK, we have 30% leakages in the system. So 30% of the drinking water is lost, basically. And the other part is that when you look at the usage of used water, it's only 3% are reused. We heard yesterday, United Emirates, they have probably the highest in the world of 89% reuse of water. That is something, part of the solution, of course, and then we heard it also from you. We need to get into that subject to reuse our water, at least for agriculture, etc. But that is as a baseline for our water consumption. And then what you see then, and coming slowly to your question,
yes, please.
we see all growing data centers in the world, like hell, incredible numbers, hard to catch. But we see and hear now the first ones, and we are in this business as WILO, we are supplying pumps for the cooling system, etc., and the infrastructure. And what you see is that the first limitations are out there because of water availability for data centers. So there is a normal halt coming into that system now. I think going forward is, I think we need to, and I think you touched the point a little bit, Valerie, that we need strategies. Politicians need to understand that water, we need strategies for that one. And it's not on the agenda yet. And perhaps we have politicians here in the room, they can answer that. But basically, that is a first answer we need. And then coming to your question, there is, of course, a commercial aspect in it. And we want to help as a company, but we need to make a return. Of course, we're not a NGO, let's say. Of course, we do with our foundation also support projects, clear. But it has to be economically viable, and then things are working as well.
But do you need a political strategy in order to decide on location and on corporate investment?
Not for us as a company. What I mean is that, for example, Europe, we have water strategies in different countries, but we do not have a very bold strategy for Europe as a total. We're shipping gas back and forth between countries. We're shipping electrical power back and forth and distribute. We don't do that for water. Why not? We have in Spain big shortages, and we have in Scandinavia a lot of availability. So these kind of things should be there and also put far more on the agenda than before.
And it's even less, I think, on strategies than it is on basic governance.
Yes.
I mean, there are regulatory gaps when it comes to water. Who owns it? Who uses it? Where does it come from? We have water that's piped with concrete, but we have an awful lot of water, particularly in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, some parts of South Asia, where the water is coming from green water. It's coming from roots in the soil. And so thinking about who the owners and the operators of the water infrastructure are, it's water utilities sometimes, some of whom aren't credit worthy, some of whom don't have a great track record, some of whom have terrible leakage and they don't have the funding to replace the leakage, some of which is natural capital. And so who owns and operates that? So it really is about filling the regulatory gaps and then figuring out for companies who are their government counterparts that they can trust on, that have the capacity and the reliability. Because for any commercial investment, you have to know that you're in it for the long term. Water is not a quick returns business. It's a long-term investment. That infrastructure is long-term. And so figuring out that regulatory stability, predictability, and having strong government institutional partners matters.
Yes.
What country-wise also, I mean, just to follow on from this conversation, because we border with India, and every year Bangladesh has a flooding problem in monsoon, because Cherrapunji has the highest rainfall, and there's a dam, and they open the dam, and Bangladesh gets flooded. So obviously, we don't have the political sink to sort of manage our water better, because India has places which has drought, but then yet we're getting flooded. So there is an imbalance there which we face every year, and it's a very sensitive topic. There's a dam, there's a river, and in 2024 when we had our revolution, I don't even know if I should say this, but I'm not a political person, so there you go. When our ex-prime minister fled, the next week there was a major flooding because India, unannounced, opened the floodgates, and Bangladesh saw one of the worst flooding. So, and this is not salt water, this is sweet water because it's rainwater. So it's a complete waste of resources when you think about it like that, when people don't even have enough water to drink. It's really a pity.
And this is where regional compacts and regulation matters, because 60% of fresh water flows across borders. So it isn't enough that one country figures out how to do it. We really do have to think about this regionally.
But what does it mean? What's in your hand, Valerie, to change, these problems and these obstacles? When we were listening to the World Bank spring meeting, I have still the title Water Forward in my ears, But maybe you can give us a glimpse. What does it then mean, hearing all this, hearing these obstacles and finding the right solutions, the tangible solutions?
So with Water Forward, it's our new program. It's a mission for us to try and take all of these challenges and put all of the right people together in the room with country ownership, because that matters. That's fundamental. Figure out the regulatory gaps and then get the financing flowing.
Also to the SMEs?
Also to the SMEs. This is critical.
Yes, of course. And this I will say that BGMEA is ongoing. We have worked with the World Bank. Right now, we're doing a project which is the World Bank on National Water Reuse Strategy. And we're already exploring water reuse, blue water footprint, and reduction, and the viability financing gap mechanisms for industrial waterways. We are in talks, but then it's also a question of shared responsibility. When you talk about sustainability as a whole, when we're part of the fast fashion industry, yesterday I was in a seminar about circularity, and that's also an argument towards slow fashion, and this is fast fashion. Water here again, how to manage it when brands ask for brighter colors, more complex coloring structures, more dyes, more washes, denim, for example, 18 washes on one pair of jeans, and you don't even know because that's what the customer demands. So it's not just about, us, him doing the technology and her trying to teach us what to do. It's about brand conscientiousness. It's about consumer conscientiousness. How well informed is a customer about how much water they're wasting, and how expensive they're making a garment. The fast fashion industry is not about sustainability. There are very, very few brands who engage, who teach, who collaborate to improve the circumstances. I could count the names of the brands in my two hands, almost, considering that there are thousands of brands. But when you talk about the ones who are trying to work with garment factories in Bangladesh to be more sustainable, there's only just a few. So this is a much...
Still only a few.
Oh, yes,
I have to say, after
absolutely.
Rana Plaza and everything.
Oh, no. Rana Plaza, again, 10 years onwards, Bangladesh today has around 297 green LEED certified buildings. It's the highest in the world. 9 out of 10 structurally best, strongest buildings in the world are in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has actually come a very, very, very long way. One should really stop talking about Rana Plaza because, that's 10 years ago. And today, I think Bangladesh is excelling in sustainability within the fashion and the garment industry like no other country around us. China, I don't think many people have this data and status because there's no transparency. Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, India, again. But with Bangladesh, the statistics are all out there, whether it's with the IFC, whether it's with any organization, whether it's UNIDO, whether it's World Bank, whether it's UNEP, whether it's UNDP, everybody is part and parcel of this one industry that we have. So if you talk about sustainability, I think, it's time for the consumers and reporters and journalists to educate themselves about Bangladesh as far as sustainability is concerned. But of course, it's a journey. And we have to actually fight with brands within our own country to say that, there are good brands like Primark, H&M, Bestseller, what's the other one? Inditex. And again, like I said, there are big brands who are working with us, not necessarily by funding us, but, train the trainer programs, awareness programs, and such projects. But then the majority, I think, have to come on board. And that's where the biggest challenge will lie. That while we talk sustainability, whether it's water or circularity, or even decarbonization yesterday, I'm going to take 30 seconds. I was surprised because the argument or the conversation was, should we forget about decarbonization now? And then it's funny because sitting in Bangladesh, we are fighting with the government, we're fighting with policymakers every day on decarbonization and how renewable energy numbers have to increase. And taxes and policy and incentives have to be changed. And this is all the Garment Association. I personally look after the sustainability portfolio within the garment sector, within the association. So this is all my work. And I'm just constantly fighting with everybody so that, the funding is more flexible and the awareness is increased.
Funding, I come back to Valerie for that. How do we keep the funding flexible and how to actually stick? I'm coming back to water forward to the title. I didn't want to interrupt you in your sentence. So please give us maybe the glimpse of what's coming up before I come back to the company side. What is your responsibility? What you like to actually bring to the ground?
So we know that there's $130 billion a year of investment needed just to fill the gap on water supply and sanitation, not to mind the rest of the water discussion. To fill that gap, we know that money can't come from government alone. It's going to have to come from private capital. But when it comes to being able to mobilize that private capital, Water Forward thinks that two things are critical. The first really is figuring out the regulatory gaps. I've talked about that. If you don't have a predictable, stable environment, if you haven't figured out the subsidies, the pay-in tariffs, figuring out what exactly you can do. We've seen some great advances in India next door. We've seen how the Great Ganga Cleanup River, with some annual annuity payments, they were able to unlock over $500 million worth of private capital into cleaning up the river. So there are ways to structure it. The infrastructure piece matters, making sure that that public infrastructure, and that's where the use of public funds is important. But then what we spend a lot of time doing is figuring out exactly what the market failures are. When water is so macro critical, when it's so important for business continuity, I mean, we've seen one water shortage, one water outage can reduce sales by 35% in the informal sector. In the formal sector, revenues can go down 80% from one water outage. So everybody knows it matters. Figuring out what's the specific market failure that's stopping a company from investing. That's stopping, and sometimes it's a guarantee, sometimes they're unclear about whether it's worth investing in the long term. Sometimes they don't know who to invest with. And so part of our job is exactly what Vidiya says. It's figuring out the data, the transparency, figuring out exactly where the market failures are that is stopping private capital from flowing, because private capital knows water is their number one input. 1.7 billion jobs depend on water to exist. Everybody knows this matters, but knowing the specific market failure in specific deals is where we're spending a lot of time underwater forward, because that's the only way we're going to get to make 1 billion more people water secure before 2030, which is our goal.
Georg, what is your take on that? To bring in more private capital into the water nexus, into the water business, and of course, what is WILO doing to increase water productivity and resilience when it comes to the local ground, to the local ecosystems?
I think, to be honest, we cannot provide the private capital or whatsoever. That is, our job is far more in the technology. When we see, okay, what can we offer? And we heard it before, technology is out there. We have very high efficient pumps, and that is also important because the energy for pumps provided or needed is huge. 15% of the world's electrical power is going into pumps. Typically, we don't know that because you never see pumps anywhere. Knowing that, and knowing that roughly 80% of those pumps are inefficient, you know what kind of, let's say, enormous potential is there to save energy. But that's just more on the decarbonization topic. I think what is important as well, where we offer support, is also smart systems, digitalization, and now even AI solutions. The other part is we talk about filtration systems. So we have, let's say, the issue worldwide with microplastics, antibiotics, and all that stuff, which is more and more getting into our body because we're taking it over the food chain into our bodies. And we have systems who can filter that. So that takes years still to scale it, however, and to invest in it. And that is not just something in Europe, that is also in the whole global south where we have that issue. Let's say where sewage plants are even sometimes not existing. So we have the technology there, efficiency. And I think the other part is probably knowledge. And therefore we decided as a company to build a WILO AI Water Academy. So we bring together science and politicians, we bring together companies and all contributing to the development of AI programs for young students, but also for the exchange, because knowledge is important in that whole field.
But, you know, I think it's really interesting, Georg, when you talk about this example of high efficient pumps.
Yeah.
When we look at irrigation, and 70% of fresh water is used for irrigation, the most efficient pump in the world is no good if water isn't priced, so a farmer doesn't care.
Right.
So you actually lose the efficiency quotient in the technology by having a regulatory gap whereby the person using the water doesn't care if it's efficient or not. What they care about the price point of the pump, and then they're going to let the water flow. And so it's really combining regulatory strength, predictability, with strong, efficient technology that actually makes best use of both.
Who should do that? Who do you see in charge on bringing all these puzzle pieces together?
So this is what we're trying to do. One of the aspects of Water Forwarders, we're working with several countries, 14 countries signed at our at our spring meetings, and we're working with 40 more on water compacts, because we think country ownership is critical. It's critical to making the issues visible. It's critical to setting out the ambition. And these countries have sat together, including countries like Uzbekistan, who've sat together and said, okay, this is where we need water. This is how we want to use it. This is how we're going to price it. These are the regulatory gaps we're going to fix. These are the technologies we're going to search out at the best price point to bring into the various sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, municipal freshwater use, whatever it is. And I think having those water compacts, so all of the players, from governments across sectors to different parts of society, to the private sector in country, and all the financiers come together with clear country ambition. And I think that way you can drive together. We all move faster together.
Would you agree, Vidiya? I saw you kind of nodding, or you mixed feelings, maybe.
No, I agree. The problem with Bangladesh is that, sometimes we don't get, our government sometimes is not particularly efficient or strict in the way they manage water. That's the sad part, because we have a lot of canals and drains, rainwater, which is all getting mixed up together. So there's the health factor to having polluted water also, which is a problem in Bangladesh, which the government really should do a better job at cleaning. At the same time, we have these submersible pumps, which are pulling water from the ground. And every year, 2 to 3 meters of the water reach in the ground is going down. That's not a good thing for Bangladesh either. I agree with everything that she said. I think government needs to come in and put in strict controls of, water management as such. Whereas the garment sector, my industry, the textile industry, they're heavily regulated. ETPs, zero discharge mechanisms and all of that we're doing. And we are actually the only industry that is very, very strictly monitored. So we're doing our part, but I think a countrywide efficiency and strategy needs to come in, which is where the World Bank is always, a key partner with Bangladesh and the garment sector that could help us more. And we rely on organizations like them, because I think when, the government needs a bit of push or a nudge, I think they can come in and do that job.
Before I open the floor, please share with us your questions. I would love to keep pick up the keyword from the gentleman here in the audience saying earlier, of course we have the technology, but when it comes to operation, maybe there are still some gaps. Would you agree, Georg, that of course we have the technology, but when it comes to operation on the ground, when it comes to efficiency on the ground, when it comes to operating the system, keeping it up, the infrastructure, keeping up with the technology, where do you see then the gap?
Well, I'm not so afraid of that one. Once it is set up, the operation typically is less of an issue, I believe. And more we are solving this issue of operations with digital systems and remote control AI systems and whatever. We have seen that, we hear that in sewage plants, often experts are missing. And then those customers come to us and say, can you help us? And then we go on with remote control and steering a system to the optimal point. I think really technology is there to help, and it's there. But it takes a while to scale that. It takes a while to teach, to convince customers, to convince governments, infrastructure companies of that ability.
But what does this mean then for new kinds of business models? Because the world is changing, so maybe we also need new business model when it comes to bringing water into the systems. What are you working on?
I think, let's say from our side, it's we have all kinds of ideas about it, but it has to come from the customer. We can dream of the nicest models, let's say, but like Valerie said, there are many aspects which we can, as a company, not control. So we are dependent on those insights, on those mechanisms, price mechanisms, that we can offer something. We are willing to do that. But that is something what we cannot influence ourselves.
Beautiful. I think we are ready with the last couple of minutes for some floor questions. 1, 2. This is my audience. I love it. Anyone else here on the ground? Not all at once, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
Okay, it's on. Hello, I'm Alan Amirkanyan. I'm from Armenia, Akopian Center for the Environment at the American
Come
University.
a bit closer to the microphone. So
is this better?
Yes,
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Alan Amirkanyan from Armenia, Akopian Center for the Environment, which is part of the American University of Armenia. We do a lot of research on environmental topics, including water is a big agenda item. You mentioned the water compact, and one of the big issues in countries, in most countries, of course, is the political ramifications of increasing tariffs on water. And most politicians just don't want to touch it. They want to subsidize it and not deal with it. So how does that get worked into the Water Compact and any other solutions that you may have implemented?
Thank you. Valerie, I think this goes straight to you.
Yes, so this is the perennial question about water pricing and about subsidies. And at the end of the day, it's figuring out what the government wants. What's the solution they're after? And sometimes it's about having targeted pricing. Doesn't mean that everybody has to pay the same. It might be targeted at particular big users. It might be targeted at particular sectors, or it could be about targeting a subsidy better. So you're not going to charge water, but you're also not going to give it away for free. So what's important is figuring out in a particular country, in a particular sector, every government has to find the solution that best fits, that's going to make sure water is used maximally for jobs and for GDP and done in a sustainable way that doesn't crowd out other sectors, nor becomes such a burden on government expenses that we know it's not going to last.
Thank you. The gentleman here. Oh, here in the back. Okay, I'll have time for your question as well. Don't worry. Wonderful. Who are you and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Christiana. I'm from the OECD Regulatory Policy Division, and we work on ensuring a regulatory, an enabling regulatory environment, working together with regulators. You already mentioned a lot of regulatory issues, so I would be interested, what would be your top 3 regulatory issues that you're seeing in the water sector?
So for me, the clear top 2, water pricing. And again, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but done is better than perfect when it comes to water pricing. And the second is utility reform, and ensuring that utilities are stronger, better partners, are credit-worthy, and have good performance track history, because that helps commercial agents then know that they can actually go in, invest in a company in manufacturing and big agriculture, knowing that they're working with the utility that's reliable.
And if I may add one point, harmonization of regulations. We have too many differences, and that is prohibiting us, let's say, from pumping water from one to A to B, so to say. I think that would
Anything
be good.
else from your side?
No.
She's taking notes, so it's going to be published very soon, I assume. So this is the good cause to spread the word.
No, I liked what he said,
Yeah.
that there has to be standardization. That's important because even with decarbonization, you know, there's so many different targets. 30% by 2030, 35% by 2035, so many different things. So as he said, it's very important in the case of water to have a global sync of what the regulatory factors should be.
Absolutely, especially with
Yeah.
Bangladesh producing for a
Yes.
global market, having
Yes.
so many different...
Because we have to abide by all of it, because we are being faced by the EU regulatory framework, the CSRDDD, the HRED, so much.
Yeah.
The ESPR, so many regulatory factors that we have to face.
I understand, yeah. I have one last question from the gentleman here on the second row. Thank you so much. Tell us who you are and what's your question is.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Carl. I'm coming from Indeed Innovation. That's a public or private innovation services firm specialized in circular economy topics. And I just want to reflect a sentiment and get afterwards a gauging from your side. And for that, I need a little bit context. Because I heard we need more data, right? More data, but data usually doesn't fix, like talking doesn't fix anything, right? And I heard about efficiency, but making a linear system more efficient is usually not fixing the problem when we have a rising gap because of data center that needs more water and stuff like that. So it comes to mind that 20, 30 years ago with oil industry, it was the same things, right? Let's make engines more efficient and stuff like that, but that didn't fix the CO2 emission problem. And if you agree, last point, that the water crisis, or if we think of a water crisis, isn't it as urgent as the ozone hole was in the 80s? And what are we doing about that? So my last point or a question to you, and you only have, exactly, the question would, the answer is easy because only give me between 1 and 10 if you would agree with me that don't we rather need a new circular system than fixing the broken linear system? 10 being, yes, I agree. 1, nope, we fix it.
We need more people and more companies water secure, however we get there. We know that reuse of water is incredibly important. That's why we've set up Center of Excellence in Singapore, who really has thought about the technologies. 40% of their municipal withdrawals are from reuse, are met by reuse. We want to look at those technologies, but overall we have to figure out every system because we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. For the 450 million sub-Saharan Africans who are extremely poor and have next to no access to water, for the women who are spending 250 million hours every day going out and collecting water, we have to find whatever solution works. And waiting for the perfect, we need to pick everything and everywhere where we can make progress. Even incremental progress is better than nothing.
Vidiya and then Georg, please, Vidiya.
Same. I agree with her. It's not just about trying to find the best system, but also to fix what is already there. In Bangladesh, for example, if I take my own country as an example, very little adjustments could improve so much. Us, private sector, we see it, but we often don't understand why the government doesn't see the same solutions. Thank you.
I could go on and on and on, but Georg, the last word.
Just two sentences
two points.
to
Yes,
you.
please.
Yes, but efficiency is important. Take one example, the semiconductor industry, the factories.
Yes.
We have wafer factories which are on an efficiency rate above 93% in Taiwan, for example, reuse of water. We have the most efficient ones in Europe having 60% only. So you see the gap that can be closed with efficiency.
Yes.
That's number one. But we need to, and I fully agree with you, we need leapfrogging. We need to put the attention high on water scarcity, availability, moving forward and showing people and the public and politicians, guys, we need to do something. 2030, 2040 is around there.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you so much for the spicy question at the end. Thank you to Georg Weber, to Valerie, Hickey, and to Vidiya Amrit Khan for bringing so many different perspectives and the call for alliances again here on the Solutions Talk. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for making time in your busy calendars. And I know it's lunchtime now, so enjoy your lunch, all right? And see you soon.
Thank you.